Allegations are piling up in Alabama after a fifth accuser, Beverly Young Nelson, said Roy Moore sexually abused her when she was 16. Take a look.
Mr. Moore reached over and began groping me. Him putting his hands on my breast, he began squeezing my neck, attempting to force my head onto his crotch. I was terrified. He was also trying to pull my shirt off. I thought that he was going to rape me. He said, "You're just a child." And he said, "I am the district attorney of Etowah County. And if you tell anyone about this, no one will ever believe you."
Now, there are also other reports that Moore was banned from a local mall for trying to pick up teenagers. A lot of Republicans are turning on him, including Mitch McConnell, who says he believes the women. But some are still sticking to him, and I guess a lot of people are trying to figure out why.
Well, first of all, if you can't shop at the local mall, maybe you shouldn't be in Senate. I mean, listen, it's just a basic part. But
for predatory behavior?
Yeah, like it was, they said it was like not an official, but that they knew to keep their eye out for a guy that wore a suit and liked to
prey on children?
Teenagers, girls. Yeah. But Senator Jeff Flake tweeted something interesting. Just to be clear, if the choice is between Roy Moore and a Democrat, I would run to the polling place to vote for the Democrat.
Who said that?
Jeff Flake.
Really? You know, one thing that I wanted to mention was when I was prosecuting these child sex crimes, people were very uncomfortable with the notion that the girl looked kind of grown and looked kind of adult. And so they felt like, you know, it must be consensual. Like they just couldn't jive the two together. And what I used to do is I used to show pictures of the kid at the age when the predation started, at the age when the grooming started.
That's right.
And it made a big difference. And there's this Me 14, I think, Me at 14 campaign. We have some of them. Look at what 14-year-old girls look like. Right? So this is a 14-year-old girl, and she says, I think, "This is me at 14. I was on the gymnastics team and sang in the choir. I was not dating a 32-year-old man." And so that's the thing. When his supporters are saying they still support him, I hope they look at what a 14-year-old looks like.
Me at 16 wasn't much better.
Yeah, you know?
Took a few years.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that this was not even the Trump candidate in Alabama. Trump came out and supported Luther Strange, actually went down in campaigns for him, and it didn't end up happening. Roy Moore, the ultimate Steve Bannon candidate, is the nominee right now. So what's going on politically? This is stone cold Steve Bannon, and which is the problem right now for conservatives like me is these are not traditional candidates you would be putting up from my perspective. And I think when you have this populist revolution and this constant fight with traditional conservatives and traditional Republicans, you're going to end up with candidates like this who, quite frankly, aren't vetted to the degree that they need to. But let me tell you, this stain is going to stick with us into the midterms and going into 2020.
To Republicans?
To Republicans, 100%.
Really?
You don't think someone who is accused of pedophilia and touching a woman and being banned from a mall, these ads, these attack ads write themselves. And it breaks my heart because, again, there's so many other worthy candidates for this. I will say, when you're talking about people voting for Roy Moore versus voting for a Democrat, politics is deeply tribal. You and I were talking about this morning. We were getting our makeup done, Joy. And I think sometimes people will just vote for their people no matter what.
Check this out, though. Speaker Paul Ryan just says, this is breaking news, if Roy Moore cares about the values of the people he claims to care about, then he should step aside. So it's a Speaker of the House saying,
We were talking
and that's important.
this morning about something that David Brooks was writing in the New York Times today about the siege mentality, that these people who are on his team, and a lot of the Trump voters feel that they are under siege, that there's too much with the gay rights and too much women's rights and the abortion rights, etc. Their tribe is under siege, and that's where they're coming from.
But you know, I want to make what you stand for in that.
Can I just tell
But they are, Sarah. That's what's happening is we're losing sight of what our values are traditionally supposed to be. And if you can't come out and say, hey, pedophiles shouldn't be sitting in the same seat as all the legendary senators that have come before in the Republican Party, we are losing sight of what's important.
When is pedophilia partisan? When is that a political issue? Right?
Pedophilia is the deal breaker because that's the deal breaker on the siege mentality. Okay. No, what I was going to say is there is a yearbook inscription. Do we have a picture of that yearbook inscription? Because Roy Moore signed this lady's yearbook when she was in high school.
Right.
Go ahead, read it.
It says, "To a sweeter, more beautiful girl, I could not say Merry Christmas. Christmas 1977, love Roy Moore, DA."
Okay. First off, what offends me about it also, besides besides the fact that she's a child, is that he writes the word beautiful in it. It's like, why are you ogling this girl?
Yes.
That's like a clue right in the statement. And, you know, we are sick of men ogling us. I don't even want anybody to tell me I look good anymore. I mean it. I can't even stand the compliments anymore. It's like, stop looking at me. You know? And this is what these young girls have to put up with on the subway, on the street, wherever we go. They're looking, just stop it. Well,
And being sexualized.
and being
Being
sexualized.
sexualized.
Yes.
I think there's a difference between looking and being groped and being raped, and I think that's also the gray area we're in right now. I will say the majority of Republicans, Ted Cruz came out saying it's unusual for grown men to be signing young women's yearbooks.
Really?
But I will say, please don't blanket all Republicans in this vein.
No.
These are Bannon people. Bannon populist is the way I would describe Roy Moore. I beg of the American public to differentiate
Sexual harassment is bipartisan.
I think people are starting to recognize that. But you said something interesting, and I want to point out that America is always changing. And so, you know, in the 40s, when black people were told they could not be with white people, they could not have relationships with white people, when people started to blend, people lost their minds. They got over it, though.
Yeah.
This is the same with gay people. Gay people are here. And they are American citizens. They are people who live next door to you and me. And they should be accorded every right that everybody else is accorded. And I get that folks feel under siege, but that's what change does sometimes. It makes you feel like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What the hell? And if that's what you're going through, we're all going through it together. So in fact, it turns out we may have more in common than we do
apart.
We always have more in common.
Yeah.
We have to say, Roy Moore has denied the allegations of his accusers, including the newest one, Beverly Nelson. He has described the accusations as politically motivated.
Yeah.
That's what he says this is all about.
And the reason that they give the argument, and maybe I said this already, but they give the argument, why are they coming out now? They're coming out now because a lot of women are coming
Me
out
Too
now.
campaign.
That's the reason.
Well, they're coming out
Right.
now because
Strengthen
people
numbers.
now know it is dangerous
So be quiet.
to do this. It is more dangerous to us as women to be quiet than it is to not. Now you know people are not going to take it. And everything is going to get vetted. So if you're coming out, know that folks are like going to be right behind you, and we're going to walk together and make sure you don't let this continue. 20 years is too long to let somebody leave somebody out there. We'll be back with more Hot Topics.